Hey everyone, it's Mrs. Cantrell. I'm back with the next chapter of Goat in the Garden. Remember the last time Mandy found Houdini and he was really sick, and she gave him what's called a home remedy to help him vomit to get all the poison out of his body. They're not sure if he's going to make it, and just as she's getting ready to leave Lydia's house from telling her about Houdini, one of the employees, Simon, comes up and slams on the brakes. He has something important to tell them, I'm sure. So here we are, Chapter 5. The only clue we have are these vegetables at the top of the page. Let's see what happens. Time froze. Seconds seemed to last forever. Mandy looked into Simon's thin, pinched face for an answer. Well, Lydia said, very brusque. She's like real businesslike. He's fine, Simon said, breaking into a broad grin. He's going to be okay. Mandy jumped into the air. She whirled around in the snow. She hugged Simon. Right, Lydia said, still feet on the ground. There's that milking to do, but before she walked briskly back up the slope, she allowed herself one fleeting smile and a sigh of relief. You might say that was Houdini's greatest escape, she said. Mandy and Simon looked hard at each other and laughed. No, I truly am pleased, Lydia told Mandy, and I'm very grateful for you acting so swiftly. I couldn't have done it better myself. She smiled, then walked quickly on. Mandy glowed under Lydia's praise. Is she always so brisk? Simon nudged Mandy and pointed at Lydia's back. She doesn't like strangers. For a second, Mandy was thoughtful. Anyway, she's probably worried about Dad's bill. She decided to stay and help with the milking, and Simon agreed to wait while she was finished. They walked up the hill after Lydia. How long will Houdini need to stay on at our place? Just overnight, Simon said. We need to check his heart rate in case this bout of poisoning has weakened his heart. It puts a great strain on the old ticker. But your dad's 99% sure that everything's okay. He can come back home tomorrow. All will be well. Still scarcely able to believe it, Mandy got busy in the barn, filling the goats' pails with fresh water and cleaning out pens, while Lydia led each goat off for milking. Come on, Jemima. Whoa, lazy beast, Lydia murmured softly while the goats nudged against her or reached up for stray mouthfuls of hay. That's a good girl, Alexandra. Steady, girl. Soon they worked their way down each side of the barn, and all the goats were milked. Simon helped out too, carting manure out to the half-frozen heap across the yard. He rolled up his sleeves and whistled cheerfully, telling Mandy a joke every now and then. In an hour, they were finished, and the goats were locked up for the night. Nearly dusk, Lydia said as she locked the barn. She looked up at the sky and allowed herself another sigh. The skies cleared. No doubt it'll freeze tonight. Then she made a little clearing sound in her throat and nodded at Mandy. And tomorrow you'll bring Houdini back home? Yes, early. Then everything's back to normal. Thanks to you, Lydia said shyly. Then her face broadened into her lovely smile. Tomorrow the thaw will come. Mandy looked up at the crystal clear sky. How do you know? I feel it in my bones. Spring is just around the corner. You'll see. Still smiling, she waved and disappeared into the house. An idea dawned sometime between Mandy's exhausted head finally hitting the pillow that night and the sun striking her full in the face the next morning. It was one of the best ideas she'd ever had. It made her jump out of bed, throw on some jeans and a sweater, dash downstairs, excuse herself from breakfast and morning chores at Animal Art, and head straight for James's house, almost without pausing for breath. Is James in? She asked Mrs. Hunter, who was just on her way down the driveway to take Blackie for his morning walk. He's still in bed, I think. Mrs. Hunter didn't have time to ask Mandy what she wanted. You're up early. Snow's melting, Mandy yelled. Lydia was right. James! Mandy rushed into the house and shouted from the bottom of the stairs. Get up! I have an idea. Sounds serious, Mr. Hunter said, emerging from the kitchen, newspaper in hand. I would stay out of the way if I were you, James, he shouted upstairs. Mandy has that look on her face. She ignored him. James, get a move on. She watched the little black and white cat, Eric, pad softly downstairs and stooped to say hello. Then James himself appeared, tousled and yawning. Do you know what time it is? Listen, I have a really great idea, and you have to help me make it work, Mandy said. You know Lydia's short of feet at High Cross. It's even more serious than usual. You know she's really worried about it. Yes, James said, running his fingers through his messy hair, and she can't afford to spend extra money on feeding the herd. Don't tell me. You thought of a way to help. James wandered off into the kitchen. I don't suppose you bothered to eat yet, he remarked. Do you want to know this plan or not? She demanded, hands on hips. I don't know. Do I want to know this plan, Eric? James asked the cat. Eric purred. Oh, go on then, James sighed, putting 2 slices of bread into the toaster. James Hunter, I'll murder you. But they settled down together at the table face to face. Anyway, are you ready? This is it. It's a plan to help Lydia and the goats, and I think it's one of the most important things we've ever done. James listened intently as Mandy explained. Soon his own face lit up. Good idea, he said. Do you know what intently means? If he listened intently. That's right. That means he's listening very closely. He's paying close attention. Do you think it'll work? She looked eagerly at him. And do you know you've got marmalade on your chin? He wiped it off. Let's try. Just wait while I grab my bike. A minute later, zipped in their warm jackets, they wheeled their bikes to the gate and set off. They met with Mrs. Hunter just as they came out onto Welford's Main Street outside the Fox and Goose. Wait, she said, gripping a nearby fence in fake shock. Can this be my son James, dressed and out of the house before 8 o'clock on a weekend morning? Mom, he complained, we're off to Walton. Is that okay? It's important. It always is. She winked at Mandy. Yes, of course it's okay, but let me give you a word of warning. Keep your eye out for Mr. Western. The name Western pulled them up short again with a squeal of brakes. Why? What's he saying? Mandy asked. I saw him at the newsstand just now when I stopped for my magazine, moaning about something or other as usual. He had a face like thunder. Something about a goat, Mrs. Hunter said, arching her eyebrows. Now, you two wouldn't happen to know anything about a goat in Mr. Western's garden, would you? It occurred to me that you might, James, since you've been spending so much time up at High Cross lately. Mandy and James' faces shut down like clamps. Murderer, Mandy said darkly. Poisoner, James echoed. What? Mrs. Hunter shook her head. Well, he's threatening to get rid of one particular goat once and for all, if he hasn't done it already. I thought I'd better mention it. She looked quizzically at the two of them. Anyway, his car's still outside the newsstand. I can see it from here, just in case you want to avoid him. Thanks, Mom. James nodded, and they set off by the side of the church, taking the back road to Walton. By 8:30, they arrived at the supermarket and padlocked their bikes to the rail outside. Early shoppers filled one or two parking spaces, but the store was still practically deserted. You know what that means? Deserted. It means that the store is practically empty. Hardly anyone's there. Come on, Mandy said, heading through the automatic doors straight for the manager's office. The manager was a stout, gray-haired man in a neat gray suit. He wore a shiny red badge with the name of his supermarket on it. He had a neat gray mustache, a white shirt, and a bright red tie. He listened carefully, nodding every once in a while. When Mandy and James had finished their request, he jotted down one or two details. He glanced at his watch, cleared his throat, and picked up the phone. I'm calling the head office, he explained in a deep, rich voice. Mandy and James sat silently with secretly crossed fingers. Waiting was always agony. Hello, head office? Gordon Jolly here. Mandy rolled her eyes. His name definitely didn't suit him. James stifled a grin. Yes, is that Mr. Middleton? Well, sir, I think I have a good piece of public relations here. There's a couple of youngsters who want us to supply them with some fruit and veggies for their pet goat. Yes, sir, that's right. James nudged Mandy, who was about to protest at the word pet. He shook his head. She bit her tongue. Does that mean she really bit her tongue? No, it means she kept quiet. She didn't say anything. Fruit and veggies past their sell-by date. That's right, sir. You've got it. Yes, they seem like a nice pair of kids, and we could certainly do with the good publicity. Local kids, word-of-mouth kind of thing. Supermarket gives away surplus vegetables for good cause. You know the sort of thing. Yes, sir. That's fine. Thank you, sir. He put the phone down with a neat click. Well, he said, there's just one problem. Oh. Mandy and James's spirits fell. Delivery. Oh, Mandy cheered up instantly. That's no problem. Mr. Jolly looked out of the window. He tapped his pen on the desk. Of course, we couldn't possibly deliver it. The cost. Well, the cost. He shrugged his shoulders. No, of course not, said Mandy, but we can collect it ourselves each day after school. What in? Mr. Jolly asked, looking for a truck or a van at least. On our bikes, Mandy said. Only when they were loaded down with cabbages, broccoli, celery, and carrots, and only when the bright supermarket bags were safely slung from the handlebars of their bikes and stacked high in their baskets, did Mr. Jolly believe them. Well, he said, I certainly admire your spirit. Thank you, they said, overjoyed. Anytime, I tell my fresh produce manager to put something aside every day. By now, he was smiling broadly and living up to his name. Remember, his name was Mr. Jolly, so jolly means you're happy. You know, like Santa Claus was a jolly old elf. Just until we get through this cold snap, Mandy promised. Only too pleased to help, Mr. Jolly said, smiling and waving, standing there in his neat gray suit. Only too pleased. And here is the picture. Oh, can't see it out here. Of the kids and their bicycles laden down, that means loaded down, with all the fruits and vegetables that Mr. Jolly allowed them to have from his store. They rode steadily out of the parking lot. Nice man, James said. Then, nice idea. Mandy blushed. Thanks. Anytime. Only too pleased. James mimicked the supermarket manager's pleasant voice. Laughing, they took the low road back to Welford. I must remember to pack my backpack next time, Mandy commented. Houdini had better be grateful. That's all I can say, James gasped. Well, let's go and see. Mandy pulled up in front of Animal Ark. It must be just about time for him to go home to Highcross, she said. Houdini was in fine shape as they led him out of the office and into the four-wheel drive. His intelligent black head was up, and he was high-stepping up the ramp into the back of the vehicle. Mandy felt very proud that her cure had worked against all the odds. She grinned at Houdini. "Just a second. I left his collar at the desk," Dr. Emily said. Jean Knox came back out with her to say goodbye, giving Houdini a scratch on his head between his horns. He flicked an ear and licked her fingers. Dr. Emily was fastening his collar when Mandy remembered something. "Mom," she began. "What?" Her mother stopped a moment. "I know that tone of voice, Mandy. It's your 'can I ask a favor' tone." James, who was trying to keep Houdini separate from the supermarket loop in the front passenger seat, leaned out the window. "Get a move on," he said. "Please." Houdini had already nibbled a large hole in one of the shopping bags. "Well?" Dr. Emily asked with a warm smile. "Go ahead. Shoot." "It's about our bill for Houdini's treatments." Mandy wondered how best to explain, then went for the direct method. "Well, Lydia can't afford to pay it. I'm sure she can't. She can't even afford to get extra feed for the goats. That's why she's never been near a vet for years, and our bill will be much more than she could pay, with the house call, the boarding charge, and everything." Her mother considered Mandy's words and nodded. "I wonder, could we make Houdini's treatment free this time? Just this once?" Mandy knew her mom was pretty tough about these things. After all, she had a business to run. "I'm really worried about Lydia." "Honestly, Mom?" Dr. Emily kept on nodding gently. "Well," she said, "this question of the fee for treating Houdini, I would have said that in this case it's very much up to the particular vet in the practice who treated him." "Dad?" Mandy asked, looking around hopefully to see if she could spot him. "Come on!" James yelled again from inside the car, getting desperate. "Back, Houdini! Get back!" "No, not your dad," Dr. Emily said. She tucked her scarf up under her chin. "You?" "Me?" "Yes, you're the one who diagnosed Houdini's problem and brought him in. You're the one who said he was worth treating once we'd already given up. And you're the one who decided on the course of treatment. Yes, I would definitely say you were the vet in charge here." Mandy beamed and her eyes shone. "Great," she said. "So I say there's going to be no charge." They clambered into the four-wheel drive together. "You'll never get rich, Mandy Hope," her mom said, smiling. "No, but I'll be happy," she thought, hugging Houdini tight around the neck. And Lydia had been right about the thaw. The sun was strong and bright by the time they reached High Cross, and the snow was slipping in great wet sheets from the roofs of houses and barns, landing with wet thuds on the cobbled yard. Lydia heard the car and came out to greet Houdini, arms open wide, smiling her broad smile. "Well, Houdini, well, my boy." She showered him with affection. Houdini repaid her with little skips of delight across the cobbles, nudging people's pockets for treats. "Fit as a fiddle," Lydia said admiringly, "and already up to your old tricks." Dr. Emily smiled. "I have some calls to make and must be on my way," she said. She shook hands politely and shook her head when Lydia struggled through blushes to mention what she must owe. "Talk to my daughter about it," Dr. Emily said. She left James and Mandy with Lydia, all making much of Houdini, who lapped up the attention. "Oh," she called from the car, "what about all those shopping bags?" So they unloaded their hoard of vegetables and headed back to the barn. "Careful," James said as they struggled with the heavy bags. "Whew, that's the last one," Mandy said, dumping a bag of carrots inside the barn door. Lydia stood by in disbelief. With the smell of fresh food in the air, all the goats sat up a clatter inside their pens. Lydia kept shaking her head and laughing. "Are you sure?" she said. "Is this for us? Well, I never." As they tipped bruised apples into each feeding pail, and a quick black head popped through each hole to snap up the treat. Mandy fed Houdini straight from her hand, enticing him back into his pen. She closed the bottom half of the door on him before he had time to protest. "There," she said, leaning her forearms along the door in total satisfaction. "Safe and sound." Houdini tossed his head and snickered. Sunlight poured into the barn in sharp, clear shafts. Lydia and James fed the other goats green cabbage leaves and broccoli from the bags. Outside, on the slope beyond the house, crocus shoots poked through the melting snow. Mandy chose Houdini the choicest cabbage leaf. He took it delicately between his bottom teeth and upper gum, then curled his bottom lip up slowly, luxuriously. The cabbage leaf vanished in an instant. "Magic!" Mandy laughed, and Houdini stretched his lips, leaned back, and brayed. "He says thank you," Lydia explained. "Thank you very much." Now, as you can see, we're not all the way through the book. We've read this much, but there's still this much more to go. So they've saved Houdini, but what's going to happen next? I have no idea. All I can see is that it's chapter 6, and there's a hammer and nails at the top. What could possibly be going on? You'll have to join in next time for the next part of Goat in the Garden.